Katmai, the Bears of Brooks River, the Plucky Squire, and Wizard's Cup. This is Staying In.
Sorry, I've got soup on my trousers.
Wow.
You really do lead that like real rock star lifestyle, don't you, Sam?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Soup on the trousers.
Mm-hmm.
You are either eating your soup at such an impressive rate. I'm recording in 5 minutes.
Gotta get it down.
He has it in like shots, like gazpacho. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Have shots of soup.
You get like gazpacho's like in a shot glass, isn't it?
Well, you don't have to serve gazpacho in a shot
But you
glass.
can serve gazpacho, and gazpacho is a type of soup, is it not?
Yeah, cold soup.
I'll be honest, I am really out on a limb here. I don't know that much about gazpacho. I'm taking some wild hits here.
You're doing well so far.
It's a form of soup which can be in shots. There you go.
Do you know, I never ever order soup when I'm out. Not because of the thing we've already discussed, which is it takes me ages to eat soup.
But it's a waste, isn't it?
It
Chris?
is. You're absolutely right, Sam. I do feel shortchanged. Yeah, very much so.
I think as a supplementary, so during a Chinese banquet, welcome a bit of sweet corn soup.
Yeah.
In between. Yeah, but it's in between other things.
Yeah.
It's not just your sole starter.
It's getting your tummy ready.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever ordered soup, not as a kind of like getting your tummy ready, was being in France, in Paris, and having French onion soup.
Oh yes,
and like it that,
okay.
And that's because you have like the massive croutons with the loads of cheese in there as well, and like it becomes like a proper meal. Anyway, but that's the only time I've kind of had. I would go out and order soup because, as you said, I don't think I'd be getting my money's worth out of the dining experience if I just ordered myself a soup.
I remember once going for a phase of making soups because it was kind of fairly cheap to make, and it was a time about a decade and a half or so ago when I was quite skint. And I thought, I'm going to have a go at making potato and pea soup. All the peas.
Wonderful. What a combination. I have never heard of.
No.
Or never seen since. Potato and pea soup.
I'll tell you why, Sam, because something incredible happens when you combine those two things together in a saucepan. There was something about the starch in the potatoes, or maybe the type of potatoes I used, but basically I batch cooked is what they call it. I don't really ever batch cook anything, but I batch cooked this soup.
But I think you can only batch cook soup.
Yes.
If you're cooking soup individually,
Just for one person.
I think that's wildly wrong.
I bought one large tomato.
Yeah, I've baked a single slice of bread. I've churned my own knob of butter, and I poured it into like a takeaway tub. I keep them, the plastic ones, when I'm taking lunch to work with me or something. And I poured this soup very carefully, this lovely kind of green colour, into the Tupperware tub, sealed it. I put it in the fridge to have later. One day I thought, oh great, I'll try out my soup for lunch. So I think I'd even made like Irish soda bread from stuff from the corner shop. And that was in the toaster, toasting away. I get the tub out of the fridge. The fridge, not the freezer, the fridge. I take the lid off it, and I could tell just by lifting it up, this thing wasn't really wobbling. It wasn't a liquid.
You'd made mashed potato, basically.
Basically, the starch in it. And then I basically held up the tub with the lid off, held my hand over the saucepan, rotated my hand basically, 180 degrees upside down, and nothing happened. The soup was just stuck in the tub. And then eventually the whole thing came out, and it all came out at one go, but it just landed just as like a cuboid structure in the middle of the pan.
I love hearing about Chris's origin story because, I think we all know about Chris's now relationship with soup. Now, was it as bad as it is now, pre or post potato and pea soup?
I think that might have been the moment.
I think it is. I think you've genuinely...
It's still there.
It probably is still there. And every time you have soup, a little bit of it awakens within you.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of soup kryptonite.
Yeah, definitely. Like,
I mean, it was green.
What was the kind of story you always told as a kid that if you accidentally swallow chewing gum, it stays inside you for how many years was it? People would say.
Well, my one was always I couldn't drink squash neat because that would kill me. Yeah. We all know the story. Yeah. Do we?
I'll tell it again. I mean, we've only got 6 stories between us, and it's every 6 months we reiterate.
I'll tell it again. Well, I was always told that I couldn't drink squash neat, and if I did, it'll kill me.
Just stone dead immediately.
Now, so I was at uni years and years and years after this. So, like, you know, I was told this when I was like 6, 7, whatever, at uni, a little bit older. And at uni, I would always go to bed with a bottle of Robinson's squash next to my bed, pre-mixed, to conquer the thirst in the middle of the night. And I woke up in the middle of the night, one night, reached out, got a bottle, and just started swigging. And it was only when I was a few swigs in, I'd realised that, oh no, I put out the neat bottle next to the pre-mixed bottle.
Not like this. Not like this.
And I've just had neat squash. So I get out, jump out of bed, run to the kitchen, down 2 pints of water, and just start sloshing it around in my room.
Just doing a handstand up against the wall.
In the hopes that I didn't die. And I you know what, guys? I survived. So what does that tell you?
Well, this tells you how annoyingly old wives' tales still exist.
I think my family tried to kind of like play pranks on me to see what I would believe. Like the classic one was always like they would get me to make the cups of tea in the morning by convincing me that I was the best one who made tea. So everyone would be like, no, I'll make the tea.
That is brilliant.
And they came with this whole thing. But I also remember, and this is one that kind of took like embarrassingly a few years for the prestige of the prank to come about, where kind of having watched like a, I don't know, Jingle All the Way or something like that, they told me that the reason why Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't smile is because he has no facial muscles. And me as a child just took that on board, like, yeah, that makes sense. And literally, like, that was then ingrained in my head. And years later, like, someone said to me, I'm like, well, yeah, but he's got no facial muscles. They were like, what? Like, he's got no, and they were like, oh my God, I can remember telling you that. I was like, what? This was a lie? Yeah.
Do you think an Arnold Schwarzenegger film could be improved if he smiled more?
He smiles in loads of things. He smiles in Terminator 2. He smiles in Jingle All the Way numerous times. He's a very adept smiler.
I wasn't saying that he didn't smile. I'm saying if he smiled more.
If we all smiled more, we'd all achieve more in life, I feel like. Chris?
So that felt directed at me.
Why don't we just try where you were speaking?
Oh.
Why don't we try it right now? Why don't we all just smile?
I reckon we'll just keep smiling.
Should we just keep?
Yeah, let's just keep going. Let's just keep this going.
There he is. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger smiling.
Dan's just holding up a picture. Nice one, Dan.
Yeah, now you see it. It's not. He's not.
No, you see it. You got to think. Is he? Why isn't he smiling properly?
It's not comfortable, is he?
No.
But smiling is one of the things that when you hear it, you know someone's doing it.
Oh yeah.
Even though, so like when I'm smiling like this, it's different to when I'm speaking like this. So I think should we try and smile for as much of this podcast as we can?
I think so.
I always smile all the way through these shows. I love doing them.
I don't know why I don't do this all the time.
Because it would freak everyone out.
It would. Yeah, let's try not blinking as well. So I've just recently finished The Root Trees Are Dead, which I spoke about in the last episode of the pod.
Oh, I recently finished Rise of the Golden Idol.
Okay, so Sam and I think it's fair to say we're looking for another game of the video variety.
Okay.
I'm not, but yeah, I'll play along.
Okay, great. I'm looking. Yeah. So
Don't let it put you off.
no. Yeah. What have you got?
I'll tell you what. I will offer a game that can be played that might kind of be suitable for both of you in different ways. So there's a game I've kind of half been playing of late called the Plucky Squire.
Okay.
So the reason why it's kind of hard, because it is kind of a game that, Chris, you could play. But Sam, if you don't want to play it, then your little boy Hugo might kind of get some enjoyment out of it as well. So you're not committing yourself too much to it.
So hang on. Let's just drill down into that recommendation there. So I mean,
I'm basically saying you are the same level as Sam's small child.
I mean, that is a compliment. Because that I take that as a compliment. I just wanted to check that. That's great. Yeah, awesome. Okay, Plucky Squire. So first things first, how long roughly does it take to beat?
For a seasoned gamer as yourself, I would say 4 or 5 hours probably.
Oh, lovely.
Like it's not going to stick around for long. It's a game that's based on its art style and its themes and stuff like that. It is directed towards a younger demographic. However, I think there is enough there for an older generation to also enjoy. So just to give you kind of a brief overview of what the Plucky Squire is, you can kind of tell by the title, it's quite a light-hearted kind of game. It's a similar kind of thing to a Zelda. In fact, it's like a 2D RPG, slightly kind of story role-playing game. You play a titular Plucky Squire called Jot. This is a game set within a storybook land. And when I say storybook land, I literally mean it's set in a storybook. You can see a storybook where the game kind of, the narrative unravels and kind of plays out. So you are a young squire called Jot, who is battling against the evil Humgrump. As this story is playing out, the pages are turning as you move between different levels, all narrated in a way that's similar to like Stephen Fry in Little Big Planet.
Oh, lovely.
That kind of thing. So you have that very light, jovial narration going over the top of it. So yeah, so as the story progresses, as you're battling the bad guy of Humgrump, you start to see certain things seeming a little bit off. There are certain comments made by characters, especially kind of the bad guy, that lead you to think that actually all is not what it seems. There is the occasional reference to something that is happening not within the story itself, perhaps something that's happening outside of the story, starting to break that fourth wall a second. And then about a quarter of the way through, we find out that actually the bad guy has discovered that he's in a storybook, and he's in a storybook that he is always destined to be beaten, because he's in a storybook called the Plucky Squire, where the Plucky Squire always wins and always saves the day. So in order to prevent this from happening, he decides to exile Jot, the Plucky Squire, and by doing so, he forces the character out of this beautifully animated 2D storybook into a 3D world outside of the book.
That's
so
cool.
He then can exist on the desk of the child whose book kind of it belongs to. And so immediately then you have this sense of this dual play style where you're in a 3D world, and it is a completely 3D world, but at any point you can jump back into the storybook and it becomes a flat 2D environment again.
That sounds really interesting. Because you've preempted a question I was going to ask there, was like, is it the case of like you spend the majority of the game in a 3D world and it's kind of bookended by these 2D experiences of starting in the book and then you hopefully make your way back into the book at the end. But it sounds to me that you're kind of jumping between these two different dimensions.
Yeah, kind of, if anything, it's slightly the other way, because you spend a lot of time in the 2D world and then there'll be portions of the game where you leave to do a certain level, often where you have to find an item which you can then bring back into the book to help you in the story. But then also there is the element of leaving the book and then being able to navigate around the book by turning pages and jumping in and out of the book, and at times lifting the book to affect something that's happening on the page. So I can tilt the book and a block will slide in a certain direction based on what I've done. So it's not just a case of this is a 3D level, this is a 2D level. There is the element of being able to move between them in order to solve a puzzle. Those things don't happen in isolation to each other.
No, it is. I have played about 90 minutes, I think, about Plucky Squire. And I think, Chris, the thing that you would like about it is the fact that it does the sort of the Verfremdungsk effect.
Okay,
right?
yep.
The breaking the fourth wall, the alienation. Like, you are always reminded as you're playing the game that you are in a storybook.
Okay.
I think one of the best things that the game does do, and when I was playing it with my son, the thing that he was most impressed about is, just like in a storybook, how you can affect the world around you by, as Dan said, like by tilting pages or even changing words that are written in the book. For me, I think what it does really well is it has the agency of a kind of like a choose your own adventure game and like an RPG, where you kind of just have a bit of a mad idea and you see if it works, and it just happens. But it's presented in the style that makes it, especially for younger people, makes it very, very accessible to that world, and kind of engaging with, especially games on a bit more of a sophisticated level, I would guess, than other things of that sort of genre.
Yeah, the whole mechanic of the text is a really kind of fun mechanic to use. It's never overly done. There's not a level of complexity that makes it too difficult. Usually within a sentence you can change one word, but there might be various options you can change it to. Like there is one where you reach kind of a level where there is a river, there is a bridge across a river with a giant toad on it, and it'll say the huge toad blocks your path. And then elsewhere you'll find something that refers to the word tiny. So you can swap those. You can go back to an old page, pick up that word and drop it in there, and it would just change the toad to a tiny toad. But in the same way, on that page, you might have also seen something that referred to a small lily pad on a lake. If you dropped that huge word onto there, suddenly that lily pad fills half the screen and you can just cross over the river that way. So there is a complexity around how you can navigate this world. But I think what I've also enjoyed about it, I think that the way that it reveals lots of different mechanics is really nicely played, which is why it's really good for kids. It starts with that 2D world, introduces the idea of the words, then kind of the fighting, and then it introduces the 3D world, and it just builds on top of each other so that it's never kind of overwhelming. But it also, from a more seasoned gamer perspective, but it's absolutely kind of lending itself and giving nods to all these different areas and lots of different just genres of game as well. Like there is one bit where you're in the 3D world and you have to interact with a character who is an elf fighter on basically a Magic the Gathering card. But it's just a really kind of fascinating way of being able to tell the story, I found. I played it a little bit and I did really enjoy it, but I did kind of think it's going to be relatively easy for me to get through. As pleasant an experience as it is, me personally, I would get more out of it from kind of playing through it with my 7-year-old son. And as my son likes to play, he plays a lot on his Switch. He plays things like Mario Kart, loves like Super Mario Party Jamboree and all that stuff. Those are all mini games and kind of repetition and playing the same thing over and over again and doing these things. And it's all really condensed play experiences. It's really nice for him to have this more narrative guided gaming experience, which has an end, because he doesn't really have that experience of playing a game from start to finish. He's played things like Donut County, which does have kind of a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah,
but again, it's 10 levels of slightly differing same thing. As good as it is, you don't have that narrative thing of A following B, following C, following D. And this has given him a really nice experience of that.
That's really interesting. I was just trying to think then, what was the very first narrative-led video game or video game with a very much a concrete narrative that I ever played?
Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, I was trying to think maybe Tomb Raider, but even the narrative's quite thin in there.
But I don't. The big sort of early games that I remember, Metal Gear Solid is definitely the one where I was just like, whoa, this is like...
It had an opening title sequence as you were playing.
Yeah, this is a story. Like, someone's actually trying to tell me something here. And I think that's probably more to do with the fact that when we were growing up and playing games, there wasn't... I don't think we were ever the target audience. Like, I don't think anyone was really making quote-unquote good children's games. Yeah. And if they were like racing games or very, very simple sports games or things like Mario.
Yeah, Mario and Sonic and that kind of thing.
But that's just the story there is defeat the bad Dr. Robotnik or rescue the princess in the tower and like Crash Bandicoot and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, like that's what's brilliant about like having a child now and showing them and introducing them to games, because the landscape for games now and how kids can interact with them is just absolutely staggering. Like things like Short Hike, Little Gator Game, Plucky Squire, tons and tons and tons of them, because it's people who are our age who have now grown up to become game developers going, hang on, this is something I didn't have when I was a kid. So now I'm gonna make it, or I'm gonna now make games for the kids that I have got. And yeah, it's Plucky Squire, I think, is just one of those decent ones to add to a pile of lots of decent video games.
Any game that can make a child be more interested in like story-driven games as opposed to something like Fortnite, yeah, I'm totally up for.
Right, would you like to play now a little game that I've invented called Sam's two-player blind date game?
Is it a working title?
Yeah, it is a working title. Yeah, you got it right, Chris.
I mean, I don't feel like you've given us an out here. I don't feel like if we said no, there's like a second option.
Well, the second option is you wait for the next episode where I'll cover some of the other games we don't talk about this time.
Okay, you're not just going to bring it back next episode?
No, because the next episode it won't be as fun because there won't be a choice.
Okay.
So I've got 4 two-player games that I've been playing recently that I'd love to share with you all, but I don't want to consume and vacuum up all the precious time that we've got together. So I thought, let's make it fun, right?
Okay.
So I thought what I'm going to do is, like Blind Date, I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot of each of the 4 different two-player games that I've been playing, and then you've got to decide which of the 2, because I think I can do 2, which of the 2 you'd like to hear about, and then the other 2 I'll speak about on the next show. Right, okay.
No, that sounds good to me. And by the way, this is how we actually do blind dates in the UK for our non-UK listeners.
An underwater machine building dueling experience.
Okay. Strong opener.
Behind door number 2, would you like a wizard auto battler from the designer who made Love Letter?
Okay, right. That is very steamy.
Behind door number 3, would you like salmon fishing with bears? And finally, behind door number 4, would you like ancient warfare?
Is that it? Sorry.
Both
your face and your tone said there was more to that sentence.
I'm a sucker. Love Letter is generally one of my favourite games of all time. So I'm totally voting for door number 2.
Okay.
Dan, what about you? Are you joining me, door number 2, and Menage a Trois?
Absolutely not. It's all about the bears fishing for salmon.
The bears fishing for salmon. All right, we've got our two games. Thank you very much.
Locked in.
We'll talk about the other 2 next time on Staying In.
Sorry, Ancient Warfare. Sorry, underwater machines.
Yes. So, right, let's talk about Wizard's Cup. Okay, Wizard's Cup. It's a brand new 2-player game from the legendary designer Seiji Kanai, who designed Love Letter. If you're listening to this podcast, you will have either played or seen a copy of Love Letter at some point in your life. I can pretty much guarantee that, because it's everywhere. And
Yeah.
it's one of those games that as soon as you're getting into the hobby, you will come across. And Love Letter is an absolutely incredible game of, how would you describe it? It's kind of like a game of deduction. Very, very simple, quite
quick
deduction game where you're trying to essentially figure out who's got what card, and using that knowledge or using that kind of deduction to kind of get an advantage over your players. So Wizard's Cup is kind of in the same vein of Love Letter, and there's been lots of games like this that have been coming out recently where they've kind of really focused on one kind of mechanic and built a game around exploring that mechanic or exploring that gaming idea to its fullest in a setting that actually makes it quite accessible. Because what Wizard's Cup is it's kind of it's kind of pitched as a auto battler. So if I say auto battler, are we kind of happy with what that actually
No, can you
means?
just remind me of what that is, Sam?
So an auto battler is primarily, it's used in kind of like video gaming circles. So there's things like you basically program something, and then your opponent would program something, a series of actions and responses, and then those two things would battle each other, and it would just be whatever's left.
Right, so almost like a little bit like Colt Express to some degree. You prime and program everything in advance, and then you just play it out and see what happens. And you're trying to think ahead of your opponent and trying to work out, well, if I do this, what does that mean then for them? But it's about trying to preempt and think about your own strategy, remembering what you just put in and what you will do next, and then trying to preemptively think about what the opposition is more likely to do.
Yeah. So Wizard's Cup tries to play off that idea, but the mechanic is actually exploring is the mechanic of card counting, which is a part of game design which you're kind of either into or you're not. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I find trick-taking games so not difficult, but not really appealing, is because I'm up for a little bit of card counting. I'm up for a little bit of playing the probabilities and kind of figuring out, well, if they've got that, they probably haven't got that, so they might have got this. But the majority of people I play with are not down with that at all, so therefore the games tend to fall flat on their ass. So how Wizard Cup plays is you are two wizards and you are competing in the Wizard's Cup. You each have identical decks. How the game begins is you each shuffle your decks, and each of you pulls a card from each other's deck randomly, and you each see it. Then what happens next is you each pick 5 cards from your deck secretly and add it to that one card that was revealed randomly, but you both know what it is. And then all the other decks get discarded. You don't play with them for the rest of the game. And then what you've got to do as a player is you've got to choose out of those 6 cards, 5 cards that you're going to battle with, and then put them in a specific order. Then once they're in an order, you put the decks next to each other and you flip over each card. You see which card wins out of that battle. That gets discarded. Then you see which card wins out of that battle. Whoever wins, the loser gets discarded. Then you see what card wins out of that battle. Whatever wins get discarded until there's only 1 card left. Congratulations, that wizard has run round 1 of the Wizard's Cup. Then you put all the cards back. You get your 6 cards back. Choose a different order. Right now, you know a little bit about what your opponent is doing. You know what's in their deck. Maybe there is some way that you can counter it. Maybe there's some way that you can sort of subvert what they're doing. And the idea is that this is all happening automatically. Like you pre-program in what your deck is doing, and then they pre-program in what their deck is doing, and then the results all get revealed automatically as like an auto battler between the two decks. And as a 2-player experience, there is, I think what I enjoyed the most out of it is a bit of that shared discovery of what the decks can kind of do. So quite a lot of the game is you just sitting with the whole deck of cards and trying to figure out, right, which of the 5 am I going to pick? One's been picked randomly for me. We can see that. So shall I build a deck around it? Or shall I go for something completely different? Shall I go for just a deck of big heavy hitters that are really high points values that are just going to knock all his players out? Or shall I go for something nuanced that builds over time and gets to a pinnacle right at the end? They won't see that coming, but they will see it coming on the next round. So maybe I shouldn't really build everything around that. And in between rounds, you can switch a card out and basically substitute something to put back into your deck to kind of battle for the next round. And I think that as I'm talking, I think I'm making the game sound a lot more complicated than it is. But this is a 1.5 complexity rating on BGG. So I feel like the real genius of this game, as I kind of led at the top, was that it manages to really get across these big, deep, conceptual ideas about card counting, about hand management, about deck building, but do it in this exceptionally accessible way that becomes really easy to know what you're doing.
Because you obviously you say there it sounds really, and to be fair, it does sound quite complicated, but I'm also always drawn back to the fact of you've only got like 6 cards, is it? Yeah. So like, as complicated as it can get, you still only got 6 cards. So that is always going to reduce down the level of difficulty, isn't it? Because you've only got so much to work with. Yes, you could do lots of different things. You have lots of things to think about, but there's still only 6 cards. Your options are narrowed down as a result of that. And do you think that's why it is accessible as it is? Because you're not being given 20 cards to filter through. It's just like, okay, this is what you got to work with. Go.
Well, you do start off with 18 cards, then you pick 5 to play with. So there is a bit of filtering.
So it sounds as though like the knowledge of the cards like really helps as you go forward, knowing what all the cards do together, how they interact with each other. If we were playing this and I've not played it before, and you've obviously played it, so you know what you're doing in terms of what I'm going to combine with different things. How long is it going to take me to get to a point where I can be confident of putting some of that stuff together? Because it sounds as though that's going to be heavily weighted in your favor then, because you know how everything is going to match up and what the best combinations are going to be. That me as a new player, I'm not going to get that.
But I'll never know what you pick until I see it for the first time. That's the thing. Like I can build a deck which I think is okay. I can build something which I think might have a chance of winning, but I'll never have an advantage over you until I see what you play for the first time, because it's a completely hidden decision. And I don't think that actually getting to know the cards is as complicated as I'm kind of poorly communicating.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the cards are duplicates of other ones, but they're just different elements of that card. Okay. So actually there's not 18 unique cards to get your head around. 6 of them are all the same. 1/3 of them are all the same, but they're just different elemental types of different cards. Another proportion of them are cards that have no abilities, that are just heavy hitters, that are just cards with large numbers. And then there's the rest of the cards are ones that have specific powers that probably need a little bit of just thinking about before you then put those into your deck. And that means that the game kind of has this self-imposed degree of like difficulty that's built into it. you can make a really, really good deck very, very simply just by building around one specific element. And then if you want to complicate it, you can then complicate it. But just by doing it by your own skill and your own sort of comfort level of how much you feel about the cards. Because as an opponent, I can only face what's put in front of me, and I won't know that until the end of the first round.
And that's interesting for me because this sounds to me, it sounds a little bit, and maybe it's overly simplistic, a love letter 1.5, because one of the appeals of love letter for me is, yes, it's counting cards, but it's not a lot of cards. No. You've got a little player aid next to you, but it's also got that thing that love letter has, where I could be a seasoned player of love letter, and I can do the gaming of it to a degree. You know, not always playing the low cards each time and holding on to the higher cards. But equally also, I could be a newbie playing it, and I can equally just wipe the floor off you, really, because it can just boil down to, okay, my card just happens to be higher than yours because of this. And I like that fact we're a game where I can return to it and discover those nuances each time I play that. And do you think, and I'm always fascinated by these kinds of games, do you think there's an appeal for this for players of games who typically don't like competition? Is this a way in to kind of stick their toe in the water and go, actually, I did quite enjoy that. It wasn't as, I didn't feel as bad as perhaps I thought I would be.
You know, this is totally my bag, and I think this is a great game, and it's also, it comes in the smallest box imaginable. It's absolutely, you know, bunging this in my bag, bringing this to Aircon, and I'm playing it with each of you in turn at select points. Put a slot in my calendar now.
Well, we're sharing a room.
Dan, it's your turn. Get here now.
And yeah, because sometimes I was just throwing cards together. Right, let's just see what happens. You can play to the expectations of the cards, or you can completely just shuffle and just see what happens randomly as the cards face up against each other.
Yeah.
There is so much sort of elastic in this, the complexity and the difficulty of this game. I think that this is going to be a little bit of a sleeper, and I generally mean that in terms of it's only a 2-player game, whereas Love Letter, you can sort of swing and hit like 5 or 6 people all in one go when you're playing that game, about how good it is. Whereas I think that Wizards Cup will be maybe not on the same level of Love Letter, but I think it will be as sort of acknowledged as an amazing piece of work, but it will take a bit more time to get there. Just watch this space.
I mean, battling wizards is all well and good, but I want to know about how I fish for salmon as a bear.
Right, okay. Katmai, the bears of Brooks River. Okay, so this is a really exciting game for me. Really excited, because this is a game that Pete and I first saw while we were at Essen, right? And it was so secret at the time that it was in a glass cabinet. We weren't even allowed to touch the bits, nothing like that. It was completely in a glass cabinet. We just were told about it. We saw it and thought, that looks good. And now it's in my hands.
Now you can touch the bits.
Now I can touch the bits. Now I'm excited. So Katmai, the Bears of Brooks River, comes for us from Osprey Games. And thank you very much for sending it to us. And it's quite a flex from Osprey in a way, because I feel like when we talk about Osprey Games on this podcast, we're usually talking about war, right? So Undaunted, General Orders,
Odin's Ravens,
not really a war game, but very...
No, it isn't. I thought I'd just mention it, just to be a part of the conversation.
Experience. One of the games I will speak of next time on the show is an Osprey game, and that is a war game, right? But their audience sometimes, in most cases, making war-y kind of stuff. Okay. That's just their bag. That's just their audience. They do it very, very well. So why change it?
Oh, indeed, yes.
Right, okay. So Katmai, the Bears of Brooks River, is, as you said, Dan, is a game about bears fishing for salmon in a river. Couldn't be less war-y.
In the Vietnam War.
Couldn't be less war-y if they tried. And, you know, I'm really thankful of that. I love, you know, when publishers and companies kind of take a bit of a swing in terms of the games that they produce. And I think what Osprey brings to this is a level of confidence in design that most other publishers probably wouldn't really give a game like this, like from the box to the artwork to how the game actually plays. Like, it really just screams quality. And I think that when you're trying to sell a game about fishing salmon, being the most effective bear at fishing salmon from the river, like, it doesn't need this level of quality. It doesn't need this level of design and thought gone into it, but it has, and I'm sort of thankful for that. So me and Chris have played this game together, and how the game works is quite sort of similar in a way to Wizard's Cup, is that you each have an identical set of bears, and they're identical in terms of their powers, and their numbers are identical, but the bears that you play with are different. All the bears are named. So you've got like Brett and Norman and Amelia and Diver, and
so very much like Undaunted.
Yeah, and Genghis and Weevil and Popeye and Backpack. Like, and the art is absolutely incredible. Tom Lopez does the art for Katmai, and you really feel like you're in charge of this family, this great big family of bears. But essentially, mechanically, you've each got identical hands of cards. You each sit between a river, and what you're doing is playing cards at specific points of the river. And then once you've played all those cards on your turn, so each player plays an equal set of cards against either side of the river, you add up the points of how much your bears are worth on that side of that river in that particular spot, and whoever has a higher number wins that spot, wins that fishing point within the river, and then you get to place one of your little bear tokens in that spot in the river. And I think, again, going back to what I was saying about Wizard's Cup, and in general about what seems to be a big theme at the moment, is games that are exploring a very, very specific theme or a very, very specific mechanic and doing it exceptionally well. Now, I know Chris very well, Dan, and I know the one thing that he hates about board games, the one thing that he really doesn't like, and the one thing that he always ignores whenever it appears in a game. Chris, do you even know what that is?
Is it the anti-grappling hook? That's always draws him in.
The anti-grappling hook.
All I've got is soup.
All he's got is soup. So Chris hates, hate is probably a strong word, but Chris dislikes optional objectives.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So we will have all have played them. You spend an hour teaching the rules and go, right, this is how you win. This is how you play the game. Oh, and
here's one other thing.
And then you get to the end of the teach and you go, oh, and here's one of the things. Here are 5 optional objectives. If you want to do them, then you'll get 10 points for completing that. Put that there and put that there and you'll get 10 points. Chris, every single time an optional objective gets put out, it's just like, well, I'm never doing them. Just ignore some.
No, it's just something extra.
You've allocated all brain resources to the game, and it's all nicely allocated, and then there's no space for the optionals.
But going back to the point you were saying, Sam, yeah, this is kind of a step up, because one of my favourite types of games I like to play with you is that head-to-head. We've got like a single board between us. There are rows we play cards into, and I can't quite put my finger on why I enjoy that so much. So Lost Cities, Compromat, Rocketeer, we're playing cards into respective areas either side of us. I'm looking at you, oh, you're going for that one, are you? Oh, you've played a 7. Oh, you must like that. And then I'm playing my bit here. But rather than it just being, oh, I've won this row, you've won that row, great, brilliant. The objectives, even though I can't compute them, I can't include them in my brain, the fact that the kind of the arrangement of the salmon that you put there can be used to kind of score, has an additional layering there on top of that.
Well, that was kind of the point that I was making, is that this is a game which is the only way to score is by completing optional objectives. So it's not a side bit. It's not a bit that's tacked on to
front and center
to the game. It is front of center of the game. So when you set the game up, when you put this really nice river in between you as players, you give yourself 3 ways, or if you're playing a bit more of a complicated version of it, a bit more of a variety of ways, but sort of standard is sort of 3 different ways of how you are going to be able to collect salmon. And that is generally pattern based. So you create patterns on the tiles based off of where your bears are. So say, for example, if you've got a pattern of brown bear, space, brown bear, space, brown bear on the tiles, brilliant. Complete that pattern, you get 2 salmon. And the salmon just sit there at the top, and you each have salmon of your own colour. And then if you get, another pattern, which is like brown bear, diagonal brown bear, then another diagonal brown bear, you're going to get 5 salmon. So what I really love about Katmai is kind of really showing the power of like what those optional objectives do and how they can really help how they help sort of design the narrative of a game, and how they can help sort of structure how a game will be experienced between players. Like it's such a really simple bit of design, but it's so good. And as you said, Chris, baked around one of our favourite 2-player mechanics, which is just trying to really figure each other out and trying to second guess everything that we're trying to do.
Yeah. And it has that thing that I love as well, and one of the reasons why I don't like games like Shot and Totten is there are cards that you can play which allow you to kind of just fine-tune and move other cards across rows, or force another player to move things around or to not score certain cards. And I like the fact that when I'm playing a card into a particular section of the river, there is a possibility that may not be a permanent thing if I play another card that allows me to move stuff, say, for example. That flexibility alone makes me get a little less irritated that if I've made a mistake, that's it, now I'm stuffed for the rest of the round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for any kind of game like this, I think what really makes Katmai sing, and I know that it's doing a really good job, especially for a 2-player, is every time your opponent plays a card, you have that thought in your mind, why have you done that?
Particularly if you're playing against me.
Because I feel like if you think that, something like, what do you know, or what do you assume that you know about what I'm going to do that has made you put that card there? And Compromat's the same, District Noir's the same, Lost Cities the same.
Oh yes.
Like all of those games are
Air, Land and Sea.
The reason why those games shine as 2-player games, and Katmai is up there with them, is that it always sparks that thought in me where I'm going, why on earth have you played Brett at that point in the river?
Do you think you overthink and I underthink? I mean, I appreciate the irony of asking this question of you now.
I don't think that you underthink. I think that you...
Because it's a made-up word.
I don't... and it's not that you don't care as much as I do.
Oh, no.
But I think that you actually play in a more constructive way than I do, because I definitely overthink and try to... Because I have never beaten Chris at Compromat, much to my shame. I've never beaten him at Compromat. And the reason is I'm absolutely busting a gut trying to card count and Chris is just, let's just see what happens. The cards are just dealt however they're dealt. Man, like he's just sitting across from me, blissed out, and I'm just absolutely.
He's watching TV. he's making himself a cup of tea,
and he's sweating, and I'm just absolutely just charging my brain, trying to figure out. Well, if I just put if this has got to be right, he's played that, so it means he's only got that left, and if I just put that and then what was that again? And like I'm just. And that's the reason I think that I've just never won that game. It's just because I cannot.
You can't switch that off.
I just can't switch that off because I know that if I got it right, if I just get it right once,
we would never hear the end of it. Oh, good Lord.
So. Dan, you're a big fan of House, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I'd say I was. Yeah, it was a good show. It still is a good show. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, it hasn't changed, no. I was watching a top 10 list. It's either a top 10 or a Christmas gifts recommendation list from Actual Lol, who's a fantastic board gamer reviewer, has a wonderful YouTube channel. And I see him at Aircon. I see him at Aircon every year. I've never gone up to him, but I think I might do that this year. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, that's by the by. He talked about a game that is a cooperative game. So we're sticking with board games here. Cooperative game that sounded right up my street. And I thought, Dan, this would be perfect for you and your wife. I've already spoken to Sam about this. This is Medical Mysteries, New York Emergency Room.
Sounds stressful.
No. It's a board game. It's not like an intense kind of role play kind of scenario.
It's not an intense version of Operation.
No. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if it was just Operation, but like pimped up? And it actually has like a proper like electric charge going through you if you make a mistake. Now, this comes from Identity Games, and it also scratches that itch a little bit like Consulting Detective, where you open the box and it's essentially a series of envelopes. And the first envelope you see is one that helpfully says tutorial on it. And you meet a nurse called Judy who kind of walks you through the scenario. And I'll just briefly explain the tutorial scenario to you so you can kind of get a sense of what the game is about. So I have in front of me a patient intake interview. So patients come in. So I've been approached as a doctor and say, look, we've had this patient come in. Her name is Luana Capule, age 53, female. She's a 53-year-old post-menopausal woman of Pacific Islander heritage. She grimaces in pain as she talks. And she says, I was gardening all day. You know this New York summer heat. I should have taken a break, but I had several large orders of herbs that I needed to fulfill for my Etsy business. I think I pulled a muscle in my back, and I'm pretty sure I got heat stroke too, because I almost passed out from the pain on the subway while heading home. I went to bed early. I couldn't sleep, and the pain kept increasing. Finally, I realised I needed to go to the emergency room. So I'm then told to take a story card where the status of my patient is they're in severe pain, and I have a list of choices here. So I could do a blood test. I could do an ultrasound. I could go to urinalysis. If I was being particularly random, I could just go, yep, gallbladder removal. And what I do then is that next to each of these choices is 3 letters. And that combination of letters takes me to what essentially is called a results code. And I open that book, a little bit like Consulting Detective, when you're looking at, okay, we're going to go and interview this suspect. And I open it up, look for the code, and it tells me it's something to do. And that might be, this is this diagnosis, or take the next story card, and it reveals the next stage in the process. And each time you make a choice in the game, a certain period of time elapses. So what you do is you log in for the very first time code, what you did, what the result was, and any notes attached to that. And every 3 of those you do, time moves on. And then basically I get told, okay, it's 2 a.m. now. Read the update from the current status card. or read or move on to another status card. So if I'm doing my job right, they may no longer be in any pain anymore, or it's got worse. So there's something not quite right here. So every choice you make is eating away at time. And you're trying to puzzle out, and the conversations you have between each other are almost like an episode of House. And the way you're able to have those kinds of conversations are that you're given like little pamphlets here about, okay, this is why you would kind of do these kinds of tests. This is the kind of medication you would give, but obviously you wouldn't give it to them if they had this, say, for example. And they're thinking, okay, do they have an allergy to this in their file? And it feels like an episode of House.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because it sounds really interesting, but then I was kind of like, well, it kind of also almost feels like I need to have a knowledge of what to do.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite fortunate because my wife's mother was a nurse, and that has really kind of just, that kind of knowledge has just been passed down through her children. But it was really kind of cool just seeing my wife kind of go into that kind of mode. But the game comes with these kinds of very accessible pamphlets that are great for a co-op game because you can kind of divvy them out between you and you go, okay, I'm going to look at brain health and drugs. I'll give you procedures and I'll give you conditions. So it's a little bit like Consulting Detective, where I don't know about you when you've played it, but we delegate. So one of us will be the note taker, the other one will have the newspapers, say, for example, and then everyone kind of feels useful. And it is like the episodes of House where each person chips in and thinking, well, it could be something to do with the brain, or somebody might say, well, hang on, no, I think we've been giving them the wrong drugs. And you've got that here in these very accessible kind of pamphlets, which kind of explain also other medical terms, what they mean. And that's something I also found kind of fascinating here, really. What troponin is, for example, which I never knew. Or in terms of specialists, what a cardiologist is. Well, I kind of knew that, for example. And you can kind of take your time, even though it feels like the clock is ticking. Obviously, you can just pause and spend as long as you want making a decision before you go, yeah, I think let's hedge our bets and let's just do it. Let's just do a full kind of blood test. Like, it might not be this, but I think we need to call a blood test just to rule this particular thing out.
And it's interesting the time scale element to it, that mechanic to it, because I always found playing something like Consulted Detective, we did get to a point where we're kind of like, we don't really know, and we then start churning through, okay, well, there must be something here, let's churn through, because you would just keep going and going, and eventually something would click. Does that time element add a form of urgency to it? So, for example, to be morbid, like, could you get to a position where someone would have died and you've run out of time to...
Yes.
So that time scale absolutely stops you having the situation where you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to do the blood test. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this, and just kind of go one by one down the line.
Yeah, that can happen. Like, yeah, definitely. Like when you open each envelope, you get like kind of like a deck of story cards, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's a lot of possible ways in which this could go wrong. And each of the story cards, you have pictures accompanying them. So it might be pictures of particular scans, or just how happy that person is because you've diagnosed them, say, for example, or how stressed they are because you've done nothing to help them so far. And you're like, okay, gosh, well, that didn't work. Well, let's try this instead. And there is always a solution.
So it's that kind of thing of, the information is there.
Yes.
Yeah. The same kind of thing with Rise of the Golden Idol. It's there, and I just really want to figure it out myself as opposed to let the game help me get it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a really nice, cozy co-op game in a relatively small box. And I know that they've brought out, there's a Miami version of this, and I am definitely going to buy that as well, because we've just had so much fun scratching that itch that Consulting Detective does, but with a completely different theme.
Well, we've really ran the gamut this time, haven't we?
We certainly
absolutely
have.
Needless to say, when you're listening to this, it is the wonderful month of March, and it's wonderful for many reasons. Mainly because it is the month that houses my birthday. I hope you've got me something lovely.
my birthday will have just gone.
Yeah. So we'd all just
Let's not skip over it.
the hangover's gone. We've worked through it. The drama's subsided as always. We've managed to calm down. You know, it's just another year down. Don't worry.
I know, we're all in it together. Teamwork.
Yeah. But we'll be thinking about my birthday, of course. It's the last birthday of the season, so make it good.
What are you getting at here, Sam?
I don't know. I'm just trying to
It's just a prolonged thing of everyone. It's my birthday.
Impress upon everyone that if you're listening to this when it comes out,
send Sam presents.
Yeah, but they can also maybe meet you in person. Sam.
You could, if you wanted to. You can wish me a happy birthday. If you would like to, you can shake my hand, or if you'd rather not to, you can just give me a fist bump. What did we do during COVID? Can't really remember.
Elbows.
Was that weird elbow shake? That
It's the weird elbow thing.
That weird elbow.
I don't think I ever did.
That Boris Johnson did, or in hospitals. We can do that together at Aircon, and you can wish me happy birthday. And for that, I will give you a gift. I will give you a staying in sticker to do it, because we will be at Aircon. This week, I sent off a big box of games to contribute to the Aircon charity raffle. So there will be a staying in prize that you could win. Hopefully it gets there all right. And we're all going to be there. So if you'd like to see us, and what better birthday present could anyone want than all of us in one room? Hey, it's all I'm asking for. So,
again,
yes, we will.
like, it's my birthday around that time as well.
Dan, your birthday's gone.
But it's eclipsed.
At the time of recording, it's not even been my birthday yet.
But at the time of release, it's been and gone. Get over it. We all had a wonderful time. So, yes, if you'd like to see us, join us, come to Aircon. We will be there. We will be doing the things that we love doing, which is generally just playing games and enjoying each other's company, and enjoying the lovely world of Harrogate whilst we are there. Get tickets. I've already heard that apparently the sales are above where they were last year, and last year they did sell out on the Saturday, I think. So, yeah, if you're really considering coming, then do it. What else can I do? What else can I signpost you to? I can tell you that we have got curated pages on Steam and on Board Game Geek. So all the board games and all the video games that we talk about on this show are curated there. It's kind of like a one-stop shop if you're looking for your next board game, or you're looking for a next gift to get someone, nudge nudge, wink wink, then you can always go to our pages on Board Game Geek. Are we meant to be smiling? Come on.
I know.
Yeah, Board Game Geek.
You are smiling, birthday boy.
Yeah, or Steam, in order to get some good suggestions. As me and Chris just said, we've just completed 2 of probably the finest detective games that have come out this year, Rise of the Golden Idol and The Root Trees Are Dead. So if you're into detective stuff, then really, really do check them out. What else? We've got Spotify playlists. So we could include some music from the Plucky Squire, I guess, on the Spotify playlist.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Sounds lovely.
And what else? Oh, the website, stayinginpodcast.com, at stayingin on Instagram. If you can't make it to Aircon but would like to see what we get up to, then stick around on the Instagram channel. There's also some pictures of some of the 2-player games I was playing. So if you'd like a spoiler for the next show, you'll be able to just see what those games are just by going to Instagram and at stayinginpod. And also, if you'd like to send us some mail, stayinginpod@gmail.com is your direct way of sending us a question, a thought, a feeling, a Steam gift card addressed to me. That would be great. No? Anyone?
No.
Right. Right. Birthdays ahoy, everyone. Trousers optional.
I mean, that is a little tease of what the greeting is going to be in your card.